What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Today's video I'm doing a review of Eternals. I'm going to try and keep this quick. I've tried filming this twice before and both times iMovie has this thing where it doesn't like filming over 40 minutes in one run, and I keep hitting that mark. I'm going to try and keep it short. But this film, I don't know what to tell you. It's amazing and you should go see it, and that's really all you should need. It's amazing, go see it. Again, I'm gonna have to try and keep my reasons for the scores that I give brief. To get a number to compare it to though, Rotten Tomatoes, the critics gave it a 48, the audience gave it an 81, Metacritic gave it a 53, its users a 66, repeating the pattern that I often see, and you will often see with these things, where the audience usually bases it off more of a I enjoyed this, whereas the critics are basing this more off how well does it fit to things that like the studios want. Studios want this score, audiences want this score. IMDb tries to bridge the gap by only giving one score, because not only can critics give their point of view, but audiences can also pull theirs into the same pool, and they came up with a 69%. When you add up these five numbers, you get 317, which doesn't divide evenly by 5, in case you needed a refresher of divisibility by 5. So when you do, you end up getting 63.4%. We're going to remove the decimal point, so we're just going up for a 63%. 0.1 of going up to 64, but 63%. I'm going to try not to gush too much on this first point, but the themes in this, I don't think I've ever watched a film that made me think so much in the days following. Like, it's been a good 2-3 days sort of thing since I went and saw this film, and I'm still, like, I didn't know how to score this to begin with, which is why it's taken me so long to make this video. So a 10. That's it. The themes are sort of this the debates, essentially. You get two sides in this film from the same group of the eponymous heroes of the film, the Eternals. You get one side where it's like, our purpose for being here on Earth is all that matters, and another that goes kind of like, you know, sure, our purpose was to, you know, help humans thrive, right? So our purpose is humans. We should be here to protect them. That was why we were sent here, to protect humans. While the other side, sort of like, our purpose that we were sent here for is to assist the emergence. The emergence should be at the point of call. Yes, that does mean that the 8 billion humans that currently exist on Earth will all die in a massive explosion, as their world was shattered by a celestial god hatching from inside it. But whatever, that's why we were sent here. That's the mission, it comes first. So it's sort of a debate of like mission versus compassion sort of deal. And then there's another one underneath that, that's sort of like, if you view the Eternals as being our gods, which they do inspire in this film and in the comics, they do inspire mythology and folklore on Earth, within anything with a Marvel label on it. So if you view them as like the gods and this little pantheon of gods, should they interfere in mortal affairs, or just leave us to our own devices, even if those devices are WMDs? Some of them are like, yes, we should. They'll sort themselves out, you know. We're here to foster intelligent life. If that intelligent life wants to destroy itself, despite the fact that that goes right against our core directive to foster intelligent life, then we should let them. While there's others that's like, that makes 0 sense. I'm gonna go try and establish some sort of peace for humans. So I definitely, I'm on that side. You know, like me personally, not a huge fan of humanity. I'm gonna be completely honest. Being a human myself, I kind of feel like that's a good argument. Like, if you were sent here to make sure that humans live, humans killing other humans, especially in mass droves, like the you know, any sort of colonization, or like, you know, any of the major world conflicts, you know, like the Holocaust, they should have interfered there. Anytime any country on the western side of Europe decided to get on a boat and travel across the sea, and colonize new land, even though there's already people living there, I feel like they should have interfered there as well, just saying. But they didn't. Here we are. Thanks a lot. But you know, themes beautiful. Performances amazing as well. Like Angelina Jolie for one, and there's 10 characters just on our core team, not to mention you've got other characters on sort of the outside of, you know, other than just our team. You know, you've got our villains, you've got our side characters, you've got our outside antagonistic like forces. There's a whole lot going on in this film. Angelina Jolie, for one, had to learn and develop her own fighting style in order to play Athena. Like they wanted to give her something that looked different than anything else you'd ever seen as far as combat was concerned. She even learned specific weapons training and stuff, and then she had to remember all of these moves for the camera without having any actual weapons in her hands, so that they could CG them in afterwards, and also remembering that she's, you know, fighting a CG monster, and they still managed to make that look realistic. It's just, the performances were phenomenal. Go and watch this film. Performance gets a 9. Direction, being a director myself, a couple of stylistic things I would have done differently, but overall, when I look back at it, it's like, okay, yeah, no, that had to be that way, even though I didn't like that element of the film, but it had to be that way so that this thing, which I loved, paid off better. And so it's like this debate of, would I change that if it lessened that? Absolutely not. So I guess, since I love this and that had to be there, I love this as well. It's kind of, those little elements kind of remind me of like Thor the Dark World in the Infinity Saga. Like that's where the Reality Stone was introduced. You take that film away, where does that stone have any other opportunity to appear? And therefore, how does it get explained before Infinity War, where it's needed? Yeah, no answer. No answer. It has to exist so that pays off better. So yeah, so an 8 there. Cinematography also gets an 8 because the camera operators and the DOP had to be aware of not only what the actual actors were doing and, you know, trying to show off as much of the other production design elements that were in the film, like the reconstructed like front gate of Babylon. It has a specific name and I'm blanking on it, but they reconstructed that for this film, like just the front gate part. And even that, you know, like obviously you'd want to show off this immense thing that people have put so much work and effort into. You're gonna want to show that off in a film like this, while also showing off like the amazing performances that were like absolute constellation of a cast, because it's so star-studded. Like you're gonna want to show off their performances and all of these other details, but you also gotta remember that like the weapons and the main sort of grunts, I suppose, you know, your little cannon fodder creatures, they're all gonna be CG'd, and so you need to remember that like, okay, yeah, cool, we're gonna like watch this one fall over this way, and we want to see like the whole body fall over, so this actor needs to not be the center of the shot, they need to be over here so that the big monster can fall and we can like see its crumpled body in a heap on the side of the screen, like those sorts of things, and they pull it off beautifully. Special and visual effects gets a 9 because of those facts as well. Like they make the deviants feel like real creatures. They also make them look like the kinds of creatures you would have seen in, you know, ancient myths. Like one of them ends up looking like a griffin, one of them ends up looking like a dragon. You know, they have these like mythical creature qualities about them, where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I can imagine the ancient Greeks, you know, talking about like, oh, I once saw this like really strong warrior fight this, you know, this flying creature, which the only way I can describe to you what it looked like is that its head was that, you know, it was kind of like that of like a lion's, and it had like eagle wings, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, that's where the griffin comes from, sort of thing. I thought that part was really well executed. Soundtrack was brilliant. I give it an 8, and that's mainly due to it being Ramin Djawadi that scored this film. An absolute legend. Production design, again, as I said, they rebuilt a whole section of an ancient city for this film. I wasn't going to give this anything less than a 9. The marketing, I was full believing that like the first time we go to Ajax's place that we're about to get this whole like bit about like, yeah, no, so like Thanos did this, and like you were gonna get that whole speech that ends up being a flashback later on, and I full thought that like, okay, cool, we're getting like this opening battle has like parts that are in the trailer, maybe we're also gonna get the other bits that look like they're in this same location. Not the case, that's the end battle, the locations just happen to look similar. So I was constantly like, yeah, we're gonna get that bit, I'm really keen for that bit, and then it didn't happen. Like, oh, okay, so like, do we not get that bit? Is that like one of those bits they put in the trailer that's like doesn't ever appear, you know, like Infinity War is real infamous for all of the Avengers in Wakanda running towards the camera shot that wasn't ever in that film. yeah, it was kind of like, was that one of those bits? And then it would appear later, and it's like, oh, this is actually, like, they haven't lied to us at all in these trailers. They've just, like, subverted our expectations by being like, you know, like, the first time you get to Ajax's house in South Dakota, you're like, we're about to find out about Thanos' snap and the immersions and that whole bit, and then we find her dead instead, and it's like, was that whole speech just to be like a refresher in the trailer for like, this is what's happening, this is what this film is going to tackle, and then it ends up being a flashback, and it's like, oh, I see. It's a really cool way of doing things. Brilliant. Its concept, I give an 8-2. This is without accuracy, originality one. I feel like for this film it was more going accurate off characters. It was more based on characters than an actual storyline. And I feel like it was pretty well pulled off. I'm also giving this sort of more of an originality scoring, because within the MCU, this was a really original concept. The only reason it's an 8 and not a 9, which I would love to give it, is because I personally haven't read many Eternals comics. I just sort of know base like character profiles and certain elements of, you know, their relationships with each other and like character histories throughout the comics. So I'd love to give this a higher, sort of more accurate representation in numerical form, because I don't have that. I feel like 8's sort of the safe bet. I don't know if it should be a little bit higher, a little bit lower, but I feel like 8's pretty safe bet there. It is an amazing film. Its concept, its themes, everything about it, beautiful. Its continuity, you only really need to have watched the Guardians films, maybe, if you wanted a refresher on like the Celestials, and then Infinity War and Endgame. And if you hadn't seen any other films and didn't really care about continuity, then you're in luck, because you get that expose in like dialogue anyway, and like there's a couple of scenes that actually like show it while there's like a monologue going on. You sort of have it explained to you in the film anyway, so you can't just walk in having seen none of the rest of the MCU and watch this for what it is and be like, oh, okay, that's really cool. A really cool like idea, because you do sort of get caught up on all the continuity you need to know. Yeah, so, but for me, having seen the entire MCU up to this point, I do feel like it's just sort of like, you know, reading a book sort of thing. It's like, okay, this takes place here in the timeline, so it's actually chapter whatever. This one just feels like I've gotten to a certain point where like I've put down the first book titled Infinity Saga, and then I can pick up the next one, and like chapter 1 was like, you know, like chapter 1 could have been Shang-Chi, but I feel like it's this film. Like, this film is really the one that's like, yeah, and then this happened. But then it's also sort of like getting over to like chapter 2, and it's like, meanwhile, Shang-Chi. And I think that's really cool. Or like you could have gone, you know, meanwhile, WandaVision, meanwhile, Falcon and the Soldier. Like, I really feel like this is like, this could have been the first film for Phase 4. and everything else still would have made sense, because like WandaVision and Loki and What If are all gonna feed into Spider-Man and Doctor Strange. So there's sort of that whole like multiverse thing going on there, and then you've also got your grounded ones like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Black Widow, which technically takes place inside the Infinity Saga. And then we're gonna get Hawkeye. So it's kind of like, I haven't mentioned one. What haven't I mentioned? Yeah, no, I've mentioned everything. Cool. So this one really for me was sort of like the next sort of like important chapter. Like, you can go and watch Shang-Chi without really needing to know anything. And so for me, it really made sort of a lot of sense that there wasn't a Disney Plus Legends episode leading into Shang-Chi, but I really thought that since this was dealing with Celestials, which we have seen before in the Guardians films, we have seen an Eternal in the form of Thanos before, that whole scenario, especially the fact that the trailers say, the trailers themselves are like, yeah, no, so like the snap, the blip, the, you know, that whole bit is like a really major, like, that had to have happened before this, and then Celestials and Thanos himself. I feel like you could have edited some of that stuff in with a little bit of the trailer footage that you'd released and made a, you know, a 10-15 minute Legends episode just titled Celestials, you know? Especially since they did one for like the Ravagers for What If, because there was one episode that involved the Ravagers. Yeah, so I feel like this one could have had its own Legends episode. They just didn't think it was worth one. But I don't know. Personally, I would have done a Celestials one, so that anyone that wants to have like the full backstory going in can just go and watch that one like 10-minute excerpt, done, okay, off to the theatre. I know everything I need to know going into this film. Just me personally. Anyway, when we add up all of our numbers, we get a total of 87, which means that I'm giving this an 87%. Which really, yeah, like I said, I could have gone on much longer than this. I feel like maybe an hour-long podcast episode was probably a more accurate thing to do for this film. Definitely something I'm going to be trying to get into next year. Lots of plans for next year. Lots of big plans for next year. We'll see how well I can execute my vision for that though. But yeah, 87%. And when we consider that the Rotten Tomatoes audience score, which was their highest, was 81%, I'm only 6 points higher than that. So yeah, I do feel like that's a pretty fair assessment. We are 24 points higher than our average as well. So that's not half bad either. But that's all I got for this video. Look at that, smashing this out in 24 minutes. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are new here, go ahead, tap that like button, like as lightly or as firmly as you would please. That would be appreciated. You're already in the area, so go ahead and like flick the bell, turn it on so you can get post notifications whenever I upload new videos. My scoring will be down below. Next month, after I've seen Let There Be Carnage, Hawkeye, and No Way Home, and out of Hawkeye and No Way Home, whichever one I see last, whether that's actually the week of No Way Home or right after watching the final episode of Hawkeye, I will be doing a 2021 Phase 4 ranking. There will be 9 titles in total. 9 titles? 10 titles. I feel like it's only 9. No, 10 titles. There'll be 10 titles in total, so it'll be a top 10 because there's only 10. And we'll see which property in the MCU I think deserves the top spot for 2021. But right now, Eternals is it's up there. It's at least on the podium. That's pretty much a guarantee, I think. But it's also going to be a very close battle, I think. There's been a lot of really good content this year from Marvel. They're doing an excellent job. But that's all I've got for this video. So until next time, guys, keep your screwed on.